Hi everybody, how are you going today? It is so very good to see you. Oh, spring has sprung and that feels so great, so great. That's in the southern hemisphere, of course. In the northern hemisphere, autumn or fall, as they call it in North America. It's always great to get out of the cold, head toward the warmth. And sometimes it's a bit great to get out of the it's too hot and head towards a bit of cool. Yes. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. Golly gosh, you and I, we know each other way better than that. We don't have to talk about the weather, do we at all? No. Today, I wanted to talk about these guys here. These little beauties. This is a Z. And if I put my finger over it, you've actually got no idea. Is this a Z6, a Z7, or is it a Z5? Now, there is one telltale which will give it away, and that is that this little thing here, this thing here, if this was a Z5, it would be here, and this screen wouldn't exist. It'd be gone. And that's it. Otherwise, besides this label down the bottom here, you would have no idea which camera this was. So today, I want to talk about the Z5 versus the Z6. I was hoping to have a copy. Don't have it yet. They are shipping. So it seems like a really good time with the Z5 now having begun shipping to talk about the Z5 versus the Z6. There might be a lot of people out there who are wondering which direction should they go in. Why would they choose a 5 over a 6? There's a lot of compelling reasons either way, and Nikon have done a very interesting job of balancing the two against each other. And one is clearly better in one direction and better at some things, and the other one's got some advantages in the other direction. The first thing that I want to talk about is cost. So right now, because the Z6 is still current, the Z5 and the Z6 can kind of be similarly priced because the Z6 is on special a lot. And the reason it's on special is because I believe the Z6S is coming soon. It's going to be a superior camera, and Nikon are trying to clear as many Z6s as they can before the Z6S is announced. So right now, in this little slice of time that might only be 2 or 3 months long, the pricing doesn't quite make sense. The pricing is going to make way more sense when we have a Z5 and a Z6S. So right now, you can buy them almost for the same price, depending on where you are in the world and what sales and promotions are going on. You just have to look hard and maybe be patient. So it's a bit of a weird one, and we'll have to talk about this again when the Z6S comes out. It's just the way it is. And they're kind of similar in many ways. As I've said, the bodies are almost identical. Now, not the end of the world. So these cameras, ergonomically, except for that one thing, are the same. You still have all of these fantastic buttons here, these function buttons, which sit right under your fingers. They're in the perfect place. You don't have to move or do anything. You can just keep shooting and have your eye up to the viewfinder, and you can keep doing it. All of the major aperture dial, shutter dial, everything works the same. And these cameras, I would say, versus the Sony, I don't know versus the Canon, but I had noticed that both Canon R5, R6, and all the Sonys do not have these buttons. So from my perspective, that's an ergonomic fail. Like, just in actually using the cameras, this is really useful to have this stuff right here, and you don't have to, you literally are shooting, and it's just this ridiculously up. Can you even see my finger moving? This minor movement to actuate it. You don't have to move around somewhere else. So the fact that the Z5 has the same level of ergonomics besides this here, this dial here, is amazing and fantastic. Obviously, it is still full frame, which is amazing and fantastic. We do need to talk about the fact that the Z5 sensor is not a BSI, it's not a backside illuminated sensor, and that may affect image quality up at high ISOs. And when I say high, I don't mean 3200 or 6400, I mean higher than that. Like ISOs that most of us don't really use anyway. So, and as for image quality, I think if you're shooting between base ISO and something normal like 3200, there's probably not going to be any perceivable difference. There may well be for the pixel peepers that get in there at 400% and crank the shadows out to 5 EVF. They might find some differences. But I think in real world usage, there won't be any differences. I think it's going to be the sort of thing that's only going to be viewable at the limits of this sensor. But the sensors are different. Similar sizes, 24 megapixels, but one is backside illuminated and one is not. Makes sense. This is going to be a more affordable camera. Now, another major difference that a lot of people have complained about, personally, it doesn't bother me at all, which is the 4.5 frames per second versus the Z6, which is basically twice that, depending on what you're doing. 4.5, it's a funny old thing, because 4.5 frames a second is still actually quite fast, if you think about it. And for where this camera is probably aimed, which is entry-level enthusiasts maybe, or just everyday people who just want a full frame instead of a crop sensor camera, they're not shooting 10 to 20 frames a second. They're just not interested. They don't need it. If you're someone who's into birds, shooting birds or wildlife or sports, you're just not going to buy the Z5. So I don't see this aimed at that type of person. Nikon are specifically going to give you a camera that's a high frame rate camera, 10 plus frames per second. That is what's going to happen. So this camera is simply not aimed at that market. And so 4.5 for everyone else who's shooting everything from concerts to birthdays to landscape to streetscape to being on holidays, this massive wide gamut of different photographic things that we can do. I reckon I shoot above 4.5 frames a second, not even once a year. Because the way I photograph is I just go, I'm never on continuous. So I just press the button when I need it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's probably 5 shots in 1 second. That's what this camera does, basically. The reality is, most people don't need it. So the frame rate, which has been a big problem for some people, I don't think it's a problem for the intended market. Probably the most glaring thing is video. Now, the Z6 and the Z7 is not talked about as much, but the Z6 and the Z7 both have very strong video specs. The Z6 slightly better than the Z7 because of the size of the sensor. It works better with the 4K video. And both the Z6 and the Z7 can do full frame 4K and 1080p, and they can both do RAW out to an Atomos Ninja style recorder via the HDMI port. So these are very flexible and very powerful cameras. And the fact that, for example, I have seen the Z6 as cheap as like 2,200 Australian dollars, 2,300, 2,100, around that sort of price point. And it has these stellar capabilities, great dynamic range, etc. Amazing. The Z5 does not have this level. It does shoot 4K, only up to a maximum of 30 frames per second, which is the same as the Z6 and Z7. But the 4K is cropped. Unlike the Z6 and the Z7, it is not cropped. But it's cropped to a 1.7 times crop, which basically makes it pretty close to a Z50. If I put my 35mm on my Z50, it basically becomes a close enough to a 50mm. And this will be similar. I'll get something like a 57mm or something like that off the top of my head. 35 times 1.7, maybe it's 55mm. Anyway, around that mark. So if you can handle the Z50's crop, the Z5's crop is not that different, and then you get beautiful 4K. It's not the end of the world. Again, this camera is not aimed at people who want the highest possible video potential out of a Nikon mirrorless. Again, by the Z6, it is very similarly priced.
And of course, one other feature that we cannot forget about is the fact that the Z5 can charge internally whilst it is on, which the Z6 and the Z7 at this stage cannot do. There's been no announcement of it. I think it's not going to happen. Now, it's not a deal breaker for me because I have so many legacy batteries dating back to 2012 from my D800 and my V1. But for others who might be getting this battery format for the first time, then the Z5 is something that you can charge all the time.
And then probably the biggest elephant in the room that has been an elephant in the room for the last 2 years is the slots. Oh my lordy, pants on fire. Slots. This guy right here, one high quality XQD/CF Express slot. Great. Love that. I'm happy with it. All good. But some people they demand, they need their 2 slots, and the Z5 has 2 slots. So that is a massive advantage. Now, if you are, say, a wedding shooter, I actually think the Z5 is going to be a great camera for people like event wedding shooters and so on. It's going to be very affordable. It's got your 2 slots if you're worried about the 2 slots. It's got all the advantages of the full frame Z system. Video is not a thing. If you're shooting video, you're going to be doing that with a separate camera. You're not going to be doing it. Well, you might, but you can still do it. All good. But you know what I'm saying. So the Z5 is great for people who are worried about that redundancy situation. I'm not worried about it. These are largely the fundamental differences. We believe that the focusing is going to be the same. And this is it for a camera. What do we have? We have its sensor. We have the lenses that it can attach. We have how many frames a second it can shoot at. And for those that are interested in video, does it do 4K and what's the frame rates and so on? The bits and whatever else. Otherwise, these cameras are very similar. The fact that you have access to the full frame Z mount at this entry-level price, this is great. And as I said at the start of this film, it's going to make more sense where this one is placed and how it's priced when we see the Z6S. What I think is going to happen with the Z6S is it's going to come out at probably $500-ish, or maybe we should put it more like 20 to 25% more expensive than the Z5, and it's going to be feature rich. So it's going to do 4K 60 frames per second. It might go higher, not sure about that, but it'll do it, and it'll do it indefinitely. And there'll be no overheating. And we're going to have faster frame rates. We're going to have, I believe, Nikon with the 2 processors that's going to be in this camera will have better focus, better ISO. Everything is just going to be tweaked faster and a little bit better. It's also rumored to have vertical grips and all that sort of thing, and 2 card slots. So then when we look at the Z5 in relation to the Z6S, it's going to all make a lot more sense. But in regards to the Z5 versus the Z6, well, right now, except for the 2 card slots, if that's not a problem for you, I would totally be buying the Z6. It is more camera, except for the 2 card slots, it is more camera for roughly the same price or a very similar price. Like I said, it depends on how you buy it and when you buy it on sale. The other thing to think about is that the Z5, any product when it first comes out, it is at its most expensive and the price will drop. I believe its price will drop by something like 20% between now and the end of the year. And then again, the Z5 will be more logical against the Z6 if there's any still in store, and the Z6S. So it's all going to make sense, and we're just in a bit of a transition phase right now. If I was wanting to buy one of them today and I could get a Z6 on sale or a Z5 as it is, because that won't be on sale yet, yeah, I'd go the Z6. I'd go the Z6 for all the things that we've talked about, except of course the 2 card slots, if that's an issue for you. And that's it. That's the Z6 versus the Z5. I look forward to getting one in my hands, hopefully sometime soon. They're still a bit hard to come by, like my 70-200S. It was supposed to arrive this week, and then I was told the boat isn't here yet. It'll be next week. So, fingers crossed, we'll be able to talk about that and show that off on the Z50, the Z6 and the Z7 ASAP. Anyway, I'd love to know, are you a Z5? Are you a Z6? Are you a Z5 or are you a Z6S? Or maybe you're a Z7 or a Z7S. Please let me know in the comments below. As always, it has been spectacular to see you. And if this is your first time here, oh, so good to meet you. I look forward to seeing you again, so please subscribe. And let's get this video out there, so share it, like it, you know, press on the bell if you want to get notified when I turn up again next. And if you want to see over 200 episodes, well, you can just look down there and there's over 200 you can watch right now. Okay, let's take a photo. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, nice. And that is a nice shot.